Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and the author of the newly released book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. You can get that through our website or visit Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all booksellers. We have a very special guest with us this morning. He's known within the publishing industry in a unique way. He's known within the media industry in a unique way. And he's known in the coffee industry as the Juan Valdez of publishing, and that is Shaun Tabatt. Shaun, welcome to the program.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you this morning.
Shaun is the host and producer of the Shaun Tabatt Show. Previous podcasts include Author Talks with Shaun Tabatt, 121 episodes, and Fortress Press Live. He's active in Christian published community. He is part of Baker Publishing Group, where he serves as marketing manager for the Bethany House Nonfiction and Chosen Books brands. He also continues to serve a number of select clients through his company, Cross Focused Media, LLC. He and his wife are the parents of 9 children, and they are about to give birth in January, on January 27th, to their newest baby, not a 9th child, but a child nonetheless who will require great nurturing and care, and that is his first book, The Subtle Art of Launching a Book. So, Shaun, you've got an active, robust life, and I watch your running record online as you track 3 miles, 30 miles, 300 miles, 3,000 miles, and you know, I'm come from the old school. I'm one of those people that believes that God has given us a certain number of heartbeats in our life, and why would I want to use up those heartbeats by doing things like running? Am I actually shortening my life by using my allotted heartbeats? What's your take on that?
Well, I can speak to my own experience with running. For me, as a busy guy, you know, running a podcast, father of 9 kids, marketing manager, I don't have a ton of free time. So for me, running is that time that I can get alone with God and just be praying as I'm running, and it's really when God gives me some of my best ideas and inspiration. So I get exercise, but I also get inspired and encouraged with the Lord at the same time.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because most people think that quiet time with the Lord should be done in their prayer closet, and that they should have a candle burning, and they should have a little bit of worship music in the background, kind of on the setting. And I see the pictures of you, and you're tucked in and you're bundled up and you're in your running, but you use that time to commune with the Lord, which is great.
Yeah, it's not unlike being in a prayer closet. I often get up and run at 4:30 in the morning, so it's just me and maybe an occasional dog walker, but it's probably quieter than any prayer closet I could find in my home.
It's great. Which came first, the Shaun Tabatt Show, or the marketing manager, or the ministry, or the client representation business?
Well, let me take you back kind of to the beginning. When I was in college, I worked at a Christian bookstore chain up in the Minneapolis area, and that's really, I'd always loved books, but that's where I really fell in love with Christian books and Christian publishing. And so I'd always had this kind of desire in my heart that at some point when I'd get into my early 30s, I'd work in Christian publishing. I went in a completely different direction for a little over a decade and worked for a bunch of software companies. And then God just kind of drew a line in the sand and sort of invited me to walk over it and jump back into Christian publishing. My first move into that world was founding Cross Focused Media back in 2010, 2011, where while I was still working at the last software company I was with, I just started doing social media and other promotion work for a number of different Christian authors and publishers. And so that still continues on the side to some extent, but that was kind of me inserting myself, if you will, into the Christian publishing world. And in about that same time as when I first started podcasting as well. So been at podcasting for about 6-7 years.
What have you found in the various parts of your experience through the Christian publishing world as being the most rewarding for you?
A couple different things. I think part of it is the relationship aspect, just with the travel I do and the authors I work with. I get to meet a lot of different people, have access to some unique voices that not everybody gets to spend time with. So, I think one of the things that's been encouraging to me is to see how many of the, big name pastors and authors, people who you often see on stages, that behind the scenes they're shepherds, and they're ministering, and they're not just flashy up on stage. They're behind the scenes working and ministering and have a heart for seeing people meet Jesus just like the rest of us do. I think also for me, a lot of it was me growing deeper in my faith, especially the last 6-7 years. And it's kind of transitioned into a place where I think God has just given me more of a platform and a voice, where now I'm moving into doing more of my own ministry. I think for 5 or 6 years, a lot of it was God using these opportunities and relationships to kind of fill me up and prepare me. And now I'm at a point where I feel like He's building on that foundation that's been laid, and kind of propelling me forward into some other pursuits and doing more ministry on my own.
Now, in your position as marketing manager for Bethany House Nonfiction and for Chosen Books Brands, you must have a tremendous amount of support and flexibility in your relationship with your management team to be able to keep your hands in multiple areas, yet still be a corporate man. How have you found the balance has been able to be maintained?
I was really encouraged that out of the gate, just our broader team and our management team was excited about the different things that I'm working on. They look at things like the podcast and some of the other things I have my hands in as an asset. It's been a way that I can build new relationships that, somebody who if I only worked for the publisher, it'd be impossible to build relationships with some of the agents and authors and people at other companies that I'm able to build through the podcast. So they've definitely seen it as an asset and a positive. Through those relationships, I've been able to bring some new authors into the company, some of whom we've been able to acquire and publish. And so, I think it's part of the, if you will, sort of the new wave of where I hope Christian media and Christian publishing is going, where not only are we publishing books and resources, but we also need to be able to own and maintain our own media channels, so we can, manage the production and creation of saleable content, but also manage the production and creation of media that we're using to promote it at the same time.
You and I started working together as we launched Revealing the Truth in January of this year, and kind of came alongside of us as a partner who brought us great authors and great interviews. And a lot of those interviews, a lot of those authors are in ongoing relationships with us in continuing to expand our social media presence, our messaging, and it's become a partnership where we really, you release a book, we interview the author. It's almost an automatic. The dynamic went from let me send you an author to consider to we have a release coming out, what's your availability to have them on? Because you go through a vetting process with your authors that I actually experienced, because I had a nonfiction book, which is not the focus of Baker. It's not the focus of many of the Christian publishers, because that's become a HarperCollins, a Macmillan. There are some mainstream fiction publishers that have really put the hammer down on Christian publishing companies being incredibly successful, with the exception of the rare, the Harbinger, or the Book of Mysteries, or something that along the line of a Jonathan Cahn type book, or a Joel Rosenberg, and even he is with a mainstream, mainline, non-Christian focused publishing company. So we've built a relationship over the years and over the year that's shown me that there is a great depth of quality in your vetting process, that you're not just looking at a manuscript. you're looking at the person, you're looking at the lifestyle, you're looking at the impact. And in some cases, we've become the voice for those without a voice who have a book, and we give them the voice and introduce them to the audience and let the audience fall in love with them. And different than a book pitch. You use a similar method in your own talk show in getting to the heart of the author and the person and their journey, because books don't sell themselves, do they?
No, no, they definitely don't. Let me speak a little bit, if you don't mind, just kind of to our vetting process. We, like most major publishers, again, I'm part of Baker Publishing Group, so we're number 3 in the Christian publishing industry. You have certain gatekeepers, acquisitions editors that bring new projects into the house, and we have a cross-functional team that considers those. But we do have very high standards. We want things to be biblically accurate, biblically sound. And we want to make sure that the content of the book aligns well with whether that's part of Bethany House or part of Chosen. We want to make sure it aligns well with our brand, aligns well with the other sorts of authors that we're working with. And, the big thing for us is, we kind of feel like once we're acquiring your book, we're bringing you into the family, and we expect this to be a long-term, ongoing relationship for many years. So we want to be sure that we're working with authors where our heart, our focus for ministry can really be strongly joined. So together we can move forward and just have a really big impact and really bring that message to as many places as God gives us the opportunity to. As far as my own kind of process focus of my podcast, I'm always looking to do 2 things. I want the audience to get to know the author. I want you to understand what's their background. Why are they the voice on this topic? What's their experiences that make them the right person for this message. And then I really just want to give them an opportunity to dig into the heart of the book and just give the listeners enough to know that this is a book that's going to meet the need they have in their life and make a solid decision about whether or not it's a book they should go out and purchase.
When you and I look at the Christian book market and what the average book sells, I think that the new numbers, they may not even change over the last 10 years, is that very few books sell more than 3,000 copies.
Sure.
To have a book sell 10, 20, 30, 50, 100,000 copies brings a little bit of special attention. I know that my book, The Codas, was 14 weeks in the top 100, and we sold tens of thousands of that book, and that gave you that quote-unquote #1 new release, #1 bestseller, #1, and you got all those accolades, and you made sure that you had people watching because the screenshot would only last for 6 minutes. But once you have that tag is yours. And so yep. When you look at somebody who is self-publishing and picks up a book and says, and best-selling author, well, we don't know how the consuming public, what determines a best-selling author. No, I'm not John Grisham, but I have 3 books on the market and a publishing career in Christian publishing for over 5 years. So it says, well, 3 books, 5 years, must be something to it, or they wouldn't still be publishing him. But we don't have good metrics, we don't have good benchmarks, and we don't really have a good feel to put that message out to set expectation. There are many of the it's gone from self-publishing to vanity publishing to co-publishing. What's the new name?
I hear words like hybrid publishing being tossed around right now. It is kind of confusing, especially for authors who are coming in going, well, what do I do? Can I get a traditional publishing agreement? Should I be self-publishing this? I think to some extent that sort of depends on the needs of the author, how they're set up in ministry, also what their actual goals may be. I think the big thing you get when you work with a major publishing house like Baker Publishing Group is you get a large sales team, you get a large marketing team where, we're dealing with stores, accounts all over the world. So, the sales and distribution, I think, continues to be a very strong driver for why you might want to try to work with a traditional publisher. The other thing that's often on the table when you have a book going through a traditional publisher is high-end cover design. There's going to be a lot more invested in the cover. There's also much higher end editorial services. So, it can take longer. Often your timeline in a traditional publishing scenario is 18 months, from when it gets signed to when it's going to be on store shelves. However, if you're in a scenario now, that's changing. We are seeing projects that get through a lot faster just to meet specific needs of authors and their ministries. But on the other hand, if you are an itinerant minister and you're speaking and you're really selling those books yourself from the stage and in the back of the room at events, maybe self-publishing is a better route. If you have a prophetic message that is timely and you want to get it to market in 3 months or 6 months, that could be a scenario where self-publishing might be a better fit, just given your timeline. Obviously, the economics are different between what you're going to pay for your book self-publishing wise versus what you're going to get through your publisher at an author discount. So, what makes sense is going to vary by a specific person's scenario. But what is really interesting to me is there is a definite shift just because authors have so many options available to them, where I think in some ways, in a good way, there's a shift of power coming back to the author side, where I feel like they have a little more to negotiate with because they have so many different options and opportunities available to them right now. The big thing to realize is if you want to go the self-publishing route, just know that you have to wear all those hats that people at the publisher, people who they employ, normally would be doing those things on your behalf. So if you're self-publishing, you're either going to have to learn how to do all those things or hire other people to come alongside you to get that book ready to come to market. So those would be the two distinctions. You lose out on some of the services that are available. You don't have the sales and distribution. But I always say, my team probably gets sick of it. Each book launch, each project is a snowflake. So no two scenarios are exactly the same. So you really have to weigh what your needs are as an author, as a ministry, to really determine what path is going to be right for you.
Now, does Baker accept over the transom submissions, or do you require somebody to go through an agent or someone or a referral to really be able to get into your queue of consideration? Because I can imagine that over the transom manuscripts, the good, the bad, and I have seen firsthand the ugliest of all submissions, and I get somewhere between 400 and 600 interview requests a month to be on our show because we are so prolific. We're 15 live interviews a week, 60 a month, and so 400 or 500 submissions to boil it down to 60 of the right people, it runs comparable. But in this process, can I just send you my manuscript? Can I just go online and fill out a form?
Well, in the case of Bethany House Nonfiction and Chosen Books, if you go to the Contact Us portion of each of those websites, we do have specific submission guidelines that give details of kind of what that looks like. I would say for the most part, we look at mostly solicited manuscripts, so manuscripts that are typically coming through an agent, so an author who has a relationship with an agent that is pitching books to different publishers on their behalf. That's not to say that sometimes unsolicited or unagented manuscripts don't sometimes get into the queue that the acquisitions editors are looking at. I find often those acquisitions that come not through an agent, that's often based on relationships that particular author has, people that they've maybe met at a ministry conference or an author's conference. There seems to be more of this in fiction than nonfiction, but there, different writers' conferences, writer events where maybe you'll get a chance to sit down with an acquisitions editor and pitch an idea, that sort of a thing. If you're looking for maybe circumventing that agent process and getting in front of an acquisitions editor, you're going to have to go to those sorts of conferences and events where they're going to actually be at and schedule some time with them. So yeah, there are ways to get around that, but traditionally, most of what you're seeing today is coming through an agent.
Shaun, I am a prolific speaker. I speak 6 days a week, 3 nights a week, every week, 52 weeks a year. I'm constantly booked. I have regular events and then I have special events constantly booked. Out of those come series. I'll give you one example. The Anatomy of Worship, a 7-part series that would make for a great book, but I just don't have the time to take that sermon series, which I did with this book, but converting the spoken word into the written word is like a translation of one language to another language. And a pastor, preacher may be great at giving a sermon, but may be terrible at writing a book. But the content and the material are incredibly valuable. Do you offer ghostwriting or writing assistance for messaging like that? And how effective is that? And how often does that actually happen?
That was one of the things that really surprised me as I started working more behind the scenes at a major publisher, is just how much of some of the major books we see coming to market actually come out of sermon series or message series that different pastors have done. It certainly doesn't happen with every project, but it can be a pretty regular thing where there will be tapes or probably not tapes anymore, but recordings of messages. Those will get transcribed, and then often you would partner that author with a writer to help reshape that material into a voice and a flow that makes sense for a book. But I guess at the start I was surprised at how much that happens, but that is a pretty normal standard thing these days to take what was spoken and turn it into something written.
So if you would be interested in a book like that, would you provide the writer under your expense, or is that the expense of the author?
It would probably depend on just the scope of the project and the investment on both sides. Sometimes it can be a scenario where the author might pay for part of it and the publisher might pay for part of it. Other times the publisher might pay for all of it. So the specific economics of how that would work would be based on what kind of the monetary side of the contract and how the investment all worked out. But generally speaking, I would say the author isn't on the hook to cover all of that. It's kind of a part of the production editorial expense.
Are the days of first time or second time or third time Christian nonfiction author advances over?
No. I think that is one thing that's a little bit different. It sort of depends, again, if you're working under that more hybrid model versus a traditional model. All the divisions at Baker, we operate under a very traditional setup where there are generally author advances involved in that sort of a thing. So certainly that is not a thing of the past. Although there are some authors who would prefer a lower advance so they can earn out faster and pay back their advance and start earning royalties. So that kind of depends on the needs of the author. I think there's a big valley right now, where first time, second time author advances are on the smaller end. And then there's kind of this no man's land that we're not seeing anything in the middle, and then things that are really big right now. So, I hope as we're shifting and changing in the market that we can maybe see this side go down a little bit and see a little more expanse on the low to middle end, just to, where it makes sense, increase some of those advances, increase some of our level of investment in the authors.
Well, that's very interesting. We're talking with Shaun Tabatt, author of the new to be released January the 27th, in honor of his 40th birthday, The Subtle Art of Launching a Book, Building a Solid Platform for Sharing Your Message. I think that it will be one of the foundational tools for every aspiring author to obtain. But he is the host of the Shaun Tabatt Show, and you can subscribe. Go to Shaun Tabatt, it's ShaunTabatt.com. And there's many ways on iTunes, Stitchers, Player, FM, TuneIn, Google Play, Overcast, and Spotify to catch his program. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back on the other side, we're going to continue in this discussion with Shaun Tabatt, host of the Shaun Tabatt Show. marketing manager of Baker Books, and author. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking to show host extraordinaire, a marketing guru, talk show host, now an author, Shaun Tabatt. Welcome back to the program.
Oh, it's good to be with you again for this second segment, Eric.
Shaun, Shaun is part of Baker Publishing Group, which is the third largest Christian publishing company in the world. And the Christian market is changing dramatically because we are seeing the body of Christ change dramatically. It's now where people like Carl Lenz are being really, they're putting out a book and then they're being grilled on TV by their answers, or Joel Osteen, and there are some other names out there that are getting published. They're getting camera time and they're being thrown a hardball, and the body would like them to step up and preach the gospel and get a great yahoo. And some of the answers that have come out of it have been to placate and make sure that it's politically correct. And I don't know about you, but I don't let my guests get away with it. How do you handle it with your guests?
Well, I do like to talk to people who have varied opinions. Sometimes I'll bring on guests that I disagree with. What I'm often trying to tease out is I want to understand and help the audience understand how they have arrived at the conclusion they've arrived at. How do they get to where they're at? What drives kind of their line of thought? So I'm more than happy to talk to people who I disagree with, but I want to understand how they arrived where they've arrived. Obviously if something really is concerning, I don't do a live show. I pre-record, so I've got a little more grace there. I'm willing to call things that I'm uncomfortable with or I just think are downright wrong. But the big thing for me is I want to have engagement with people who believe differently. I just want to understand them. It helps to challenge me in my faith walk, and just I want to get their perspective, and maybe if I can encourage them or help them see a little bit differently, maybe I can help them move forward a little bit changed or challenged. So I would definitely want healthy dialogue.
And I agree with that. And we bring on, brought on traditional rabbis, non-believing in Jesus, and had many discussions. I have a traditional rabbi friend out west who wrote a book, Jesus the Jewish prophet, and probably knew more about Jesus than the average Christian, just didn't accept his messiahship. And so
Sure.
When I first had him on, he wrote a book called Revisiting the Exodus, and things we know now to add to the story because of archaeology that more than amplifies it. And we built a healthy respect of we did not agree to disagree. We disagreed in our disagreement, and at least he gave me a forum in which to present the gospel to him in Jewish terms, which I would do, and for him to consider and to be willing to come back on the show as a second timer. We get many Holocaust survivors who have not come to faith but want to tell the story of the Holocaust and answer the question, how could a loving God let such a horrible thing happen? And try to be a voice for many, because when I first came out with my book in 2012, I was the leader of a large congregation. I was on the board of a large organization, but I had no voice. I did a lot of talk radio, always geared to Middle East prophecy. So in the world, I was known as the Middle East prophecy guy or as the Jewish believer, but not as the author. So when I would get bookings on hundreds of radio shows, and they were all book pitches, you're going to have 6 minutes, and the first 3 minutes is this, we're going to take a station break, and then we're going to get a minute and a half, and you're going to wrap. And I did well over 1,000 of those. And I said, never again. There has got to be a way, somebody willing to give a voice to the author who the audience can relate to the person. I can't just go through on the 8 million titles that are up on Amazon or the shelves, which are just crammed full of books, and relate to a picture in a one paragraph and decide that this is somebody who is credible or likable. We buy from people we like. We don't always necessarily pay the best price. We don't always necessarily go to the closest store. We shop with people we like. And so I was committed to give a voice to people who didn't have a voice, a first-time author, which is what we did with Chosen and with Reveld, and what we do with you there at Baker is we take many of your first-time authors that would not get a 1-hour feature on a television program that was going to be broadcast live and receive thousands of live views, then receive tens of thousands of views on the YouTube channels and hundreds of thousands of views on the WND TV channel, and get that kind of exposure out of the chute. And it was because somebody gave me a chance. I felt it was my responsibility to take and give unknowns an opportunity. So we try to do one day's worth, 3 specific interviews, even to self-published authors that have come to us through the Westbows or through the other avenues, and give them a voice. And you know, we feel like we're doing our part in helping bring the gospel message in a way, in a new perspective, and I know you do too. You've done hundreds of interviews. Of those interviews, is there one that stands out in your mind that was really the most either moving or comical, or the one you refer to when you tell the story of the Shaun Tabatt Show, your go-to story? Is there one of those?
Probably the one that sticks out in my mind. I had the opportunity to interview Bill Johnson earlier this year about his book, Hosting the Presence, which is a really great book. And what really stands out for me with that interview was just, whether you spend time with Bill behind the scenes in a meeting or at a meal, or whether you're getting him on an interview, he just is who he is, and he shares from his heart. And what you read in the book, how he answered the questions, there was just a lot of synergy with he definitely lives out the type of message he writes in his book and what he preaches. For me, it was just his heart came through for me, and I think for the listeners in the interview, that a way was really unique and special. So that one definitely holds a special place in my heart. Another would be, I've gotten to interview Dr. Michael Heiser. He's part of Logos Bible Software out there in Bellingham, Washington. He's had a number of books. The Unseen Realm is one that I see all the time. We seem to get each other's sense of humor. We both have a lot of very similar kind of Bible geeky interests. And so any opportunity I get to talk with him, we just have a rapport and kind of a flow that's a lot of fun and brings a lot of excitement to the interview. So those would be 2 that really stand out.
Yeah, I've got Michael on. Had him last month on Unseen Realm, and I've got him twice in January because he and I hit it off that way as well. I'm a Bibleologist, a unique term I've coined for myself, because how do you tell people that you're a Pentecostal, charismatic, spirit-filled Jew, and that you spent 44 years in the Talmudic, and that's just another commentary, and so I've just referred them as commentators. And coming from the Midwest, a commentator is a spud, and why would I want to take my teaching from a spud? So there are things in the Bible, and I surround myself with great friends like Carl Gallups and Tom Horn and Michael Heiser, and people who are willing to dig into the Bible and have us be in almost at times be in violent agreement, and at other times, and I have a guest coming on at the end of the month to talk about the rapture. Um, you know, interesting statistic: 80% don't believe in the rapture. 80% are pre-trib. 80%, 20% are don't believe. 20% are pre-trib. 20% are mid-trib. 20% are post-trib, and 20% aren't sure. Meaning, 80% of the body of Christ is wrong.
Sure.
That's an interesting statistic, that 80% have it wrong, because it's divided into all those camps. So when you think about things like that, it makes you question, okay, if 80% of us are wrong, then why aren't we talking about preparing for the eventuality that we have a better than a 4-to-1 chance that we're wrong, as
Very
opposed
true.
to just sitting back and saying, what difference am I going? I'm going to be sucked out of here. I'm not going to have to deal with any of that mess. So those are the kind of interesting and the dialogues. I think one of my favorite guests was the president of Wesleyan College in Oklahoma, who wrote the book "We Are Not a Daycare," Everett Piper, and his students wanted to get so politically correct that actually a student came to him and said he was offended by something, and he said, "Then go home and tell your mother," because we don't give degrees in feelings. So if you're not happy here, this is not a daycare. You are perfectly willing. You enrolled in a university that has a standard, and it's like saying, okay, I want to come to America, and here are the Bill of Rights, and here are the Constitution, but my feelings are hurt because I believe differently and I should be treated differently. No, that's the standard by which all must meet. And it's interesting that we get into these type of dialogues in these interviews. You, as well as I, believe in getting into the heart of the matter. I shared with you earlier that we have a regular, and we have 8 regular contributors. I think many of them come from Chosen, who are a part of our core team as regular. Like I'm an online contributor to conservatingfireandline.com, to Prophecy News Network, to WND. There's other things where I can write a commentary, an op-ed, and send it out and know it'll be published. These are regularly scheduled. Peter Rosenberger and wonderful people like that are bringing views to sleep and to caregiving and to some of the major issues that are really facing the body of believers. And our approach is we try to cover the 360 of the experience and make people realize that there is an answer for them. They're not just alone struggling in this by themselves. And I know you give that kind of assurance as well. In your new book, The Subtle Art of Launching a Book, Building a Solid Platform for Sharing Your Message, what are some of the tips that you share that you're willing to kind of give us a little bit of under the cover look?
Yeah, the big thing for me, and this is a good chunk of the book will be focused on this, is you need to be working on the book and thinking about positioning in a way that ties to what you might think of as your major life purpose. Where does God have you going in ministry? I think a lot of people get caught up in sales figures and bestseller lists. Those are all important things to be shooting for and important things to be tracking. But I feel like that's kind of a flash in the pan sort of scenario where you have a window to go really hard at those things, and that window will pass, say, 30, 60 days from release time. Well, what are you going to do for that additional 10 months after release, or those 2 months out? So I really want authors to get their head around needing to align their goals for the book in such a way that it just makes sense with what they're doing in life and ministry, so that long term they can have that passion for the book. Because as you're aware, Eric, promoting the release of a book, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's not just release month, it's year one after release, year two after release. It's something that you want to have it backlist well, and that means you're going to need to be positioned in a way that you're doing media, writing articles, and continuing to promote that book to get the word out. So that would be one primary thing is making sure you understand what your major life purpose, what your goals are, where God is leading you, and how does the launch and ongoing promotion of your book align to that. I'm also spending a lot of time talking about what's important platform-wise. You still need to have a home base, a solid website. You still need to be building an email list. I think that's one thing that often gets overlooked. People get very obsessed with, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, which is great. It's important. I think we love the instant feedback that can give us. But long term, you want to have, list things that you own. So if Facebook goes away tomorrow, Twitter goes away tomorrow, you still can access those fans, those subscribers, that sort of thing. So don't neglect building an email list. And then, another big focus is be sure that you're serving others. Be sure that you're helping others. Having been serving a lot for the past 10 years in lots of different capacities, as I'm getting ready to launch this book, I have a bunch of different friends coming out of the woodwork asking, how can I serve you? How can I help you get the word out about this? Now, that's after like a decade of serving other people. And so that's one of the things that I think people really need to be conscious of building into their launch plan is, how can I serve other authors, other people in my space? Now, not all of them are necessarily going to help you launch your book, but a lot of them will, because if you've been kind and you've served them, they want to return the favor to you. So those would be a couple of the kind of core top level things that I cover in the book.
And it makes sense. I sold 9 times as many of my books in person, which is why I have such a robust nighttime audience and conference audience, is that I can go to a conference and I can sell 1,000 books at a conference. And with the author's discount, that's $10,000 of profit, that depending on whatever your arrangement is. So if you can become the keynote speaker or put together a panel of like-minded, I think that Rhonda Stoppe and many of your West Coast female authors have all syndicated, and they're putting on conferences and working together and cross-marketing and cross-pollinating and building a social media presence and not being afraid of supporting another author's work. You and I were talking about Michael Heiser. Okay. Well, all right, I have $20 to spend, and you just convinced me to go buy Michael Heiser's book. I'm not buying The Subtle Art of Launching a Book, and I'm not buying the 7 Laws of Abundant Living. You've convinced me to go buy Michael Heiser's book. Well, you know what? We're hoping that Michael Heiser's having conversations going, I've got 2 buddies who are in the book interviewing business, and they're authors too, and I'm going to talk about them. And so this idea that this is it's an industry, but it's a family, and there are a couple of gatherings. There's the NRB, National Religious Broadcasters, which I'll go to for the first time this year, because we're a network for the first time this year, and I'll feel my way around a whole room of people that I know, and will look at me and say, who's the new guy who's got 500,000 social media followers, and where did he come from, and what's he doing here? And I'll be looking to you to be my seeing eye dog in some cases as I meet up with some friends and other authors and other publishers. The holiday season, books are still, in my opinion, one of the greatest gifts to give for the holiday, especially ones with lasting and meaningful messages. Where can people go to find the catalog of books that your publishing company puts out, that they can read a snippet much easier than searching on Amazon? You as a publishing company have a catalog that you put out there that's a digest of all. It's a mini catalog that shows you the author, the book and the concept to kind of prepare yourself for your shopping spree? Where would they find that?
They can head on over to bakerpublishinggroup.com. And there you can either go to catalogs and see the catalog that covers all 7 of our brands, or you can click on the individual brands, say Bethany House, Revell, Chosen, and look at the individual catalog segments for those divisions. But yeah, if you want to check out what we have going on right now for Baker Publishing Group, it's just bakerpublishinggroup.com.
Great. And they can reach you at the Shaun Tabatt Show. You have contact information there on the show. The name, email address, and a message, and this goes directly to you, to your company at Cross Focus Media there in Champlain, Illinois. What are your plans for the holidays?
Well, I'll be putting together a lot of toys and such. Like you mentioned earlier, we have 9 children, so I always spend a lot of time constructing doll houses and other things, whatever we happen to receive as gifts. We have lots of grandmas and grandpas, so it's always a very exciting time for us. I'm sure I'll try to fit in some extra time running to work off kind of those great holiday meals and treats. But generally speaking, it's just going to be some quiet time at home for my family. We actually just moved to Champaign, Illinois back in September, so we're still getting settled. So I'm definitely looking forward to just some good quality downtime with the wife and children.
Well, it sounds very exciting, and we just want to extend to you and your family a very happy and healthy holiday. You have played, this is the first time you and I have met, but you played a very important part in the success of this program, Revealing the Truth. We are launching a new segment called Revealing the Bible, which will run in the 9 o'clock hour, and that is a verse by verse, line by line, in Hebrew, in English, in the Old Testament, and in English and the original Koine Greek, which is the Jewish form of Greek, of doing, starting in Genesis and going all the way through Revelation, in context, in the original text, going back to the original. So most people, New Testament is a Greco-Roman Greek New Testament. It doesn't read like the original Koine Greek does. So we're in the 9 o'clock hour, moving from that being the prophecy hour to Revealing the Bible, and we're very excited about this. This is a teaching I've been doing for years and years, and people are so hungry. People read the Bible through the year, but they've never studied the Bible line by line, verse by verse, to see how amazing this book is and why there are it's still a bestseller. But Shaun Tabatt, thank you so much for being with us here, spending an hour with us on Revealing the Truth and being such a good friend to us. And I want to thank you personally for your support and your friendship and wish you great success with the book launch. Please come back on the show when the book launches, and we'll have you on as an author and interview you. And we have in our audience a great many potential authors. I have many more book ideas up my sleeve, and so I'm looking forward to having that discussion with you. So for you and your 9 children and this extended family that you have there in Champlain, Illinois, we wish you a happy and healthy New Year and a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Eric. Merry Christmas to you as well.
We're going to take a short break, and when we return, we are going to bring on, of all people, Shaun Tabatt's brother-in-law, Putty Putman. We'll be right back.